जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। गोपी जना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। गोपी जना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। गोपी जना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजन। 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 यमुना तीर वनचारी। यमुना तीर वनचारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। गोपी जना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandan Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bo Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravishagacharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad Srila Bhaijanarind Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Thakur Haridas Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Devi Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Rani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Harinama Sankirtana Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Samsthapak Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Go Premanande All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna. Maybe somebody can check to see if this is broadcasting on the internet. Because if it's not, then I'm okay just to turn it off. Because it's disturbing otherwise. So this is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 6. And today we will finish that chapter. That chapter deals with the liberation of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And we left off at text number 270, I believe. But since the subject matter is important, maybe we should just reiterate what Srila Prabhupada said in 269 because it's one of the longest purports in the chapter. You getting a signal? It's there. Okay. So TK. Okay, so please repeat. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Okay, I'm just going to read text 269. This is when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya approached Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and quoted this famous verse from the 10th canto. Tatteno kampam susamikshamano bhunjana evatma kripam vipakam tadvagvapurbhir vidadhan namaste jiveta yo mukti pade sadaya bhak. That means that when we go through life, suffering whatever our lot is in life, and at the same time humbly offering our respects to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and expecting His mercy very eagerly at every step, then He becomes very kind to us, and it's virtually guaranteed that we will become unalloyed devotees. Sridhar Swami comments on that verse that all you have to do is stay alive. The word is used, daya bhak. That means your inheritance. If you have an inheritance coming, then you basically just have to stay alive. Maybe watch out for your siblings, but basically you just have to stay alive. And you'll get it. So similarly, devotee who is humbly serving Krishna despite whatever his karma throws at him, he will get Krishna's mercy. It's just a question of time. Now, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had been so influenced by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by this time that he didn't want to say the verse as it's stated because the verse has the word mukti in it. Previously, he was an impersonalist preaching Advaita and aspiring for mukti. Now he doesn't even want to hear the word mukti. He's ready to change it to the word bhakti instead. So, that was back in text number 261, and since then as well. But Prabhupada writes that devotee has to be uninterested in Sayujya Mukti. Sayujya Mukti, we may have heard already. There are two kinds. The one is that you merge into the Brahman effulgence. Another one is that you merge into Krishna's own Satchidananda Vigraha, which Prabhupada says is even more offensive. That's the worst thing. I had this misconception when I first started reading Srila Prabhupada's books because I was contaminated by Mayavad philosophy. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet, I thought, yeah, I'm going to be in there. I'm going to be in that lotus foot, inside. But that's not the case, actually. So devotees would rather serve the lotus feet than merge into the lotus feet. And even merging into the impersonal Brahman effulgence is also not very sanguine for a devotee because a devotee wants to serve. And in that position where you don't recognize any distinctions of any sort, any kind of distinctions, you can't render service. Anyway, we can say much about that, but I'm just kind of recapitulating what we've already heard. So let's begin. We're on text 270. Salokya sarshti samipya sarupyaikatvam apiyuta diyamanam nagrhnanti vina mat sevanam janaha. Anybody know this verse, where it's from? It's Bhagavatam, if I'm not mistaken. Kapila's teaching his mother. There are 5 kinds of liberation. Actually, we've been talking about Sayujya Mukti. So we've heard these two kinds of Sayuji Mukti. Actually, other Vaishnava Sampradayas have a completely different conception of Sayuji Mukti, so don't be confused if you hear them saying something like, the devotee who is so absorbed in love of Krishna that he acts on behalf of Krishna's senses. You become one of Krishna's senses. And not that you merge, you don't become one of Krishna's senses actually, but you act as in that capacity to fulfill Krishna's desire. That's their idea of mukti. And that would be compatible with Vaishnavism, but this is not recognized by our acharyas, so we have to follow our own acharyas. They recognize these two kinds of sayuja in which you either merge with the Supreme Lord's personal Satchidananda form or you merge with his impersonal form's effulgence. Neither is acceptable because it's devoid of the duality and the variety that devotional service ultimately entails and depends on. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya concluded, even though he is offered all kinds of liberation, the pure devotee does not accept them. He's fully satisfied engaging in the service of the Lord. I once asked Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu about this because it could be confusing. Devotees, they may be offered Salokya Mukti. What does Salokya Mukti mean? Salokya. Same planet. You're living in the same... In other words, you're going back to Vaikuntha or you're even going back to Goloka. That's also Salokya Mukti. And devotees may be confused that, well, yeah, I thought we were supposed to go back to Godhead. Or Sarishti Mukti, what is that? Sarishti. Sarishti, yeah, you have the same opulence as the Supreme Lord. And who has that kind of mukti? Maybe. I was thinking of, there's a few examples we can find. There's Ravana. When Ravana, because he was killed by Narasingha, he didn't get bhakti, he didn't go back to Godhead, but he got this sarishti mukti. So he became the most powerful person in the world. Almost, you can say he was like Vishnu. Or samipya mukti. Prabhuji is doing the offering right now. He's in samipya mukti right now because he's in the personal proximity of the Lord. That's what it means, samip, to be close to the Lord. Sarupya, same, what is that? Saru. You look just like Narayan. Everybody in Vaikuntha, they all look the same. The only distinction is that the real Narayan, Adi Narayan, he has this little Srivatsa on his chest. Sometimes if you see a picture of Balaji Venkateshwara, you see these two things are here. That's Srivatsa and Lakshmiji. Because Lakshmiji is also an eternal resident of the Lord's chest. Vishnu Vakshasthalastita. Vishnu, Narayan. So this is the Chaturdabhuja Murti you can have in Vaikuntha or even in Goloka. Also, if you go back to Goloka, you will have a form of a cowherd, somewhat resembling Krishna, maybe not exactly, who in Krishna's Leela was looking very similar to Krishna, so much so that sometimes people mistook them for the same person. Huh? Uddhava, yeah, very close. The gopis came out one day and they saw this chariot there, and then they saw Uddhava and they, oh, has he returned? No, not him. Poor gopis. So, and then ekatvam. Ekatvam is this sayuja mukti that we've been discussing. So diyamanam, even if this is offered, nagrihnanti. The devotees don't accept. Vinamat sevanam. So the answer to my question about whether we should actually accept these four kinds of Vaishnava liberation or not, Gopi Paranadhana said, if they are favorable to your devotional service, then you can accept them. If they're not favorable to your devotional service, then maybe you should not accept them. If you're a pure devotee. Mixed devotees or lower caliber of pure devotees, we can say they may accept liberation even if they know that the Lord wants something else. Or at least if the Lord in one of his forms wants something else. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has told us, Jare dekhe tare kaha Krishna upadesh, amar ajnai guru hai tare desh. So for us, there's not a whole lot of question about it. We have to keep preaching to everybody we see. Or, for example, Srila Prabhupada has given us this instruction, you please implement Varnashram. Until that's done, how can you go home? Prahlad Maharaj says, in the beginning of his prayers to Narasimhadev, well, first of all, he says, even though I'm a demon, I can't offer prayers, because a demon can become reformed. But then he says, the Lord is offering me so many things, but Narad Muni picked me up and has engaged me in service, so how can I neglect his service? Whatever the spiritual master gives you as an order, you would rather die than to fail to fulfill that order. Not that we want to go back to Godhead and let Prabhupada's mission remain unfulfilled in this world. That's not pure devotional service. At least it's not the highest level of pure devotional service. So devotees are like this. If liberation is favorable to service of the spiritual master, then they will accept it. Otherwise, if it's not favorable, here he says, Vinamat sevanam janaha nagarinhanti. Even I'm offering them these 5 kinds of liberation, they're not going to accept it. Okay, Prabhu kahe mukti pade mukti pader arak artha hai mukti pada shabde sakshat ishwara kahai. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied to Sarvabhauma when Sarvabhauma quoted this verse saying that we don't accept mukti. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said the word mukti pade has another meaning. Mukti pada directly refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mukti pade jara she mukti pada hai kimva navam badartha muktira samashroye. All kinds of liberation exist under the feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he is known as Mukti Pada. Just like the name, what's another name of Krishna means? He gives liberation. Mukunda. Da means to give. So Mukti Prada or Mukti Pada or Mukunda, this is Krishna's position. He can give you liberation, no problem. Therefore, he's known as Mukti Pada. According to another meaning, Mukti is the 9th subject, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the shelter of liberation. What is that meaning? Kimva navam padartha muktir samashreya. Think a little bit about this. If you've studied Srimad Bhagavatam carefully and analyzed its content, is this ringing any bells to anyone? The 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam is called what? If you look at the chapter, the cover, the inside cover of the Bhagavatam, every volume is given a particular theme. So what is in the 9th canto? Nobody's picked up the 9th canto? Ever? Huh? About Lord Ram. Okay, good, yes. But that's not what the 9th canto is themed. The theme of the 9th canto is mukti. And what is the theme of the 10th canto? You might have seen this one. Huh? You're guessing. Well, the whole Bhagavatam is nothing but bhakti. But what is the explicit theme of the 10th canto? Sumam bonam, very good. And what is that in Sanskrit? Prabhupada translates it as sumam bonam, but actually the word is ashraya. Therefore he says, Kimva navam padartha muktir samashraya. So this is another meaning of mukti pada. It's dealing with the Bhagavatam, which will give you liberation. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who is described at length in the 10th canto, he's the shelter of liberation. Sam ashraya. That's why the 10th canto is called Ashraya, or the Sumam Bonam. Now let's hear what Srila Prabhupada says here. Lord Sri Krishna is also known as Mukunda, or he who gives transcendental bliss by offering all kinds of mukti. Certainly, it's bliss if you can be in the personal proximity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Raise your hand if you agree with this. Yes, everybody would love to be with Krishna. That's bliss. What about if you have a form that's just like Krishna's form? That would be fun, right? It's bliss. If you are living in Vaikuntha, is that miserable or is it bliss? It's bliss. What's the other one? If you have equal opulence to the Lord. People can relate to this one. Yeah, that's what we're all here for, isn't it? Kaun crorepati banega. They have this in India. So everybody wants to be very wealthy. They're especially attached to that. It's really it's a supreme irony, actually. All these people are going and worshipping Lord Narayan, and Lord Narayan is also known as Shripati, the Lord of all opulences of every sort. What kind of opulences? Madhvacharya says in his Dwadasha Stotra, Srishti, Sthiti, Pralaya, Sarga, Mahavibhuti, Vritti, Prakasha, Niyama, Bandha, Avarta, Mokshaha. That's 10 things that he mentions. Yasya apanga lava matrata urjita sa shrir. Yet kataksha balavati ajitam natosmi. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the unconquered Supreme Personality of Godhead. At least he's not conquered by Srimati Lakshmi Devi. But what does Lakshmi Devi do? By merely her sidelong glance, she puts into effect the creation of this cosmic manifestation, the maintenance of that cosmic manifestation, the destruction of that cosmic manifestation, all the great wonders that it contains, all the occupational engagements of the living entities within it. Everybody, every living entity everywhere is doing their dharma. That means occupational engagement or vritti. What's your dharma if you're a dog? If you go on the corner of South Beacon and Gurley Avenue, southwest corner, there's a yellow house with a very, very aggressive pair of bulldogs. And as soon as all you have to do is walk by and smile at them, and they're just immediately ready to tear you to shreds. I like their spirit, but I'm not going to get anywhere near them. They have that nature. Once you're incarcerated, locked into that dog body, you can do nothing but follow the nature that impels you to do such things. There are people like that in this world. They're the ones who become such bulldogs. They're just causelessly mean. There are such people. Or, I mean, there's so many, there's so many different natures that we have and desires that we have, and that's what drives us on throughout these 8,400,000 different species of life. But everybody is locked in by his species. And we mentioned that yesterday. Dharma, this is what we're saying, dharma. Dharmotha papa nichaya shrutayastapangsi brahmadi kita badagava jayash jivaha. From Lord Brahma down to the little tiny bug, kita, little insect. Everybody has their dharma, everybody's locked into that dharma, they have no escape, no options. The life of options is only the human form of life, so think about it and use it well. Don't misuse this option of devotional service that human life affords us. Otherwise you may wake up in the morning and you don't have any hands anymore. You've got 4 legs. And you can't even complain about it because you're not allowed to use words anymore. You can only bark. So this is Mukunda. He gives liberation from this cycle of repeated birth and death. But we were saying, how do we get on this topic? That Srishti Sthiti Pralaya Sadhana Sarga Mahavibhuti Vritti. We're talking about vrittis. This is one of the things that comes from Lakshmi Devi. She's in charge of all this stuff. Everybody thinks that Durga Devi is actually the most powerful goddess, supreme Mahashakti. But she's nothing but a representative of Lakshmi. So all these things are coming from Lakshmi. In fact, vritti, niyama, whatever discipline you have, that's the blessing of Lakshmi. Avrita, when you're covered over by Maya, that's also coming from Lakshmi. Banta, your bondage. Moksha, your liberation. Yasya apanga lava matrata urjita sa. Urjita. She's considered to be very powerful for these reasons. And yet, she's under the control of Shripati, who is Narayana. But he's actually playing with us, I think, because Madhvacharya says this Supreme Lord is unconquered. So what's the hidden meaning here? Maybe Madhvacharya knew about this. Maybe he didn't know about it. I don't know. But this is my take on the matter, coming from Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's commentary on Krishna Karnamrita, first verse, in which the word Jayashri is used in reference to whom? Jayashri. Srimati Radharani. And why is she called Jayashri? Conquers Srimati Lakshmi Devi. All this power, this wonderful manifestation of energy is coming from Lakshmi Devi, and yet Radharani, a little cowherd girl, she's able to conquer this. What is the proof? This in Chaitanya Charitamrita elsewhere, when Mahaprabhu was discussing this with Venkata in Srirangam. And if you go to Vrindavan, then you will see, if you're adventurous enough, you can cross the river right across from Vrindavan, directly across. You'll get to what they call Bilvavan, because it was full of bilva trees, bael trees, in other words. Everybody eaten bael before? Sweet, cooling fruit. They eat it in the summer. Cools you down. So that's called bilva in Sanskrit. And it's also called Shrivan. Why is it called Shrivan? Because she came to that Bailvan, Lakshmi. She had heard something from her husband, not from her husband. One day she heard some flute playing and she was curious, where's this coming from? What is this flute music? So she asks her husband, Narayan, and her husband immediately got a little nervous. Oh, no, that's just, there's a boy down there in the material world, his name's Krishna, he's playing the flute. Oh, who is it? No ordinary flute sound is coming to Vaikuntha, so who is this little boy? He said, no, you don't need to know about it, it's not important. He didn't want his wife to know about this, because he has extramarital affairs. He didn't want Lakshmi to inquire too much about this. So, but she was very curious, so she went around, as wives do, Actually, usually the husband, if there's a problem, the husband is the last one to find out, right? Whole neighborhood knows. So she went to somebody, Narad Muni, I think, and she's asking about this, and Narad Muni, he's ready to explain, because Narad Muni is always ready to stir up the pot, right? So he's telling that, yes, this is actually an esoteric form of your husband. Then she really got agitated. She goes, I've got to see, I want to see this. Just like the ladies in Dwarka. That's another story we don't have time for. But that's how we have this deity of Madhvacharya, Udupi Krishna. They wanted to see Krishna's Bal Leela in Dwarka. They're Dwarka queens, and Krishna again tried to dissuade them. No, you can't do this. But they coerced him virtually, and he had to do it. So these queens are even also more powerful than Lakshmi, in that they have that much pull over the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, therefore he manifested as that deity form. But Lakshmi Devi, she came to Vrindavan and she's ready to execute austerities, because either it was Durvasa or Narad Muni, I don't remember which one. Somebody told her that if you want to see this form of Krishna, it's not so easy. You've got to go to Vrindavan. And she came to Vrindavan and she she found out that the flute music was all happening at Seva Kunj or Nidhivan. She found out that's like the epicenter of what's happening here. So she tried to get in, but these two gopis stood in the doorway of the kunja, and they said, "Nope, you can't come in." They're fearless, little gopi girls, and they're telling the Mahalakshmi, whom everybody worships in all the three worlds, "No, you can't come in here. Just see." Even Radharani's friends can conquer Lakshmi. What to speak of Radharani herself? So Lakshmi was a little bit, well, what to do now? And Narad Muni again, he told her, you have to execute austerities and pray for the mercy of Srimati Radharani. She's thinking, oh, who's this Radharani? I have to pray for the mercy. But she was humble. She submissively, sometimes we don't understand the instructions that we get from our spiritual master. Sometimes we don't believe them, actually. We have our own ideas. But if we're humble, we can make advancement. So Lakshmi Devi started to execute austerities there in Bilvavan. And what's there in Bilvavan? It used to be Bilva trees, but now if you go to Bilvavan, it's nothing but thorns and dust. And she's sitting there. Now Krishna, meanwhile, he's enjoying with all these young gopis in Nidhivan, and he knows that his wife is across the river in this horrible place. Not horrible, but austere place. Lakshmi Devi, who has personified opulence and austerity, which is, to give up all opulence, how can they go together? It doesn't really fit. And so Narad Muni was, many people tried to dissuade her actually from her goal, but she wasn't going to give up. And in fact, to this very day, she's still there in Bilvavan, her very nice temple, a very peaceful place, beautiful spot, on the opposite shore of the Yamuna from Vrindavan. And she's executing austerities. Now Krishna, obviously, he must have felt guilty, so he told his cowherd boyfriends, you go there, and at least, maybe you can dig her some chulha, that's these mud stoves that they use in the villages to cook with, so you can at least cook something, no? And maybe you can build her some jhompuri out of, leaves or something. Do, at least give her some facility, because she's just sitting in the dust, Lakshmi. And so they did that. Then gradually, this temple was built, and she's still there, still executing austerities. But she's not yet come into the Rasa Leela, not yet been able to do it. Because Radharani is Jayashri, she conquers even this Lakshmi. And Krishna's under her thumb completely. So it's glorious. The example of her seva is there. But how did we get on this topic? Lakshmi Devi, she's... yes. Okay. So anyway, Lakshmi Sahasrashata Sambhrama Sevyamanam. They're not really different people, actually. These gopis are the original forms of these Lakshmi expansions in exactly the same way that Krishna is the original form of Narayana. Everybody worships Narayana. In Vrindavan, first thing in the morning, if you see the sun, everybody, Surya Narayana Nama. And, great sages are meditating on Lord Narayana. And even the Mayavadis are trying to understand Narayana, Narayana, Narayana. But nobody knows, who knows this Narayana who's up before the gopis and who devastates their pantries and steals all the butter and leaves a huge mess. By the time they wake up and enter the storerooms, it's already a mess because he's already been there. Who knows this Narayana? Not very many. Only if you are graced by Srimati Radharani, then you can understand a little bit of these Vraja pastimes. But here, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explaining to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who has been awakened to the reality and the glory of this Vraja Bhakti, so much so that he's ready to just change the words of the Bhagavatam because he doesn't like the word mukti anymore. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, no, don't be extreme. It's okay. The Bhagavatam is perfect. There's a reason, and this is what it is. Muktipada also refers to the Supreme Lord. So, Dui Arthe Krishna Kohe Kene Parthaviri Sarvabhauma Kohe O Patha Kahite Napari. Since I can understand Krishna according to these two meanings, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, sorry, this is Lord Chaitanya speaking. What point is there in changing the verse? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied, I was not able to give that reading to this verse. So, just like when I first joined ISKCON, before I joined ISKCON actually, when I first started to associate with the devotees, I told you, I used to think that this means to place me as an atom of your lotus feet. It means we're going to merge into Krishna's feet, because that's all I'd been told. Nobody understands bhakti actually in truth, tattvataha. But by the grace of the devotees we can understand. This is one thing that I came to appreciate right away. Whoa, I had a very different understanding. And they're telling me that this is what it means. Because nobody's preaching this. Everyone in this world is almost all envious. And they can't tolerate that there's a person who's actually supreme to all of us. It's intolerable to them. So that, yeah, he's Krishna's there, but he's just like, the real thing is this impersonal stuff. No, and envy. Yadyapi tomara arthai shabde kai tathapi ashlishya doshe kahana na jai. Although your explanation is correct, it should not be used because there is ambiguity in the word mukti pada. Yadyapi mukti shabdera hai panchavritti rurhivritye kahe tabu sayujje pratiti. The word mukti refers to 5 kinds of liberation, but its direct meaning usually conveys the idea of becoming one with the Lord. Mukti shabda kahite mane hai grihnatras, bhakti shabda kahite mane hai ta ullas. When the very sound of the word mukti immediately induces hate and fear, this is Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's conversion. But when we say the word bhakti, we naturally feel transcendental bliss within the mind. Shuniye hashene prabhu anandite mane Bhattacharya kailo prabhu dridhalingane. Upon hearing this explanation, the Lord began to laugh, and with great pleasure immediately embraced Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya very firmly. In other words, he liked the change in his mind. He thought it was very good. Jai Bhattacharya pade padai mayavade tara che vakyaspure chaitanya prasade. Indeed, that very person who had been accustomed to reading and teaching Mayavad philosophy was now even hating the word mukti. This was possible only by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mercy. Everything is possible by mercy, and we don't get anywhere without mercy. In this material world, whatever you want, it comes from where? Blessings from superior personalities. When I was in college, my thesis advisor gave me a little handout, how to tackle your subject in your graduate thesis. How to tackle your thesis. The whole mentality is wrong. Knowledge is not something that you tackle or conquer. It's something that's given to you. This innate humility is the primary characteristic of South Asian civilization since time immemorial. And certainly it's the very feature, the distinguishing characteristic almost, we can say, of Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta. So much so that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami does say, you should take this verse, 3rd verse of Shikshastika, string it around your neck and never forget it. What is that verse? Trinadapi sunichena torodapi sahishnana amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. 4 things that are very simple, but they're extremely difficult for a person who is puffed up. 4 things. 1, you consider you become more tolerant than the tree. In Los Angeles, outside the temple of Sri Sri Rukmini Dwarkadhish, there are many magnolia trees. Here we have some magnolia trees also. These magnolia trees have been there for so long that the branches, the city comes by every once in a while and prunes the trees just to make sure that they don't make a big mess. So I could see the scars on each one of these trees. One tree, I counted 36 limbs this tree had donated to the city of Los Angeles. 36 limbs. Been cut off. That's tolerance. That's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was using this. Or, everybody knows what the nature of the dog is. It's not just to bark at somebody who comes running by their place, but what else do? They're prepared to urinate on any tree, every tree, to mark their turf. And they're prepared to do so even on the Tulsi plant, for that matter. Right? In exactly the same way that every conditioned soul here in this world wants to accomplish something and leave their mark on the world, isn't it? They have that expression. It's like a dog peeing on a tree. It's not more significant than that. Because at the end of the day, all the dhum-dham is over and you're dead. This was John Maynard Keynes, famous economist. He said, in the long-term analysis, we're all dead. So people are so concerned about this eating, sleeping, mating, and defending stuff. And, they want to do it in a big way. Make sure that they go down in history. Just like a dog wants to urinate on the tree to mark his spot. And nobody else can come here. If you try to enter, I'm going to bark at you or bite you. Animal mentality. So, more tolerant than a tree and more humble than a blade of grass. Why more humble than a blade of grass? The bottom of everybody's foot touches the top of the blade of grass. That's a fact. Nobody wants to touch shoes so much, right? Other people's shoes, especially, we don't, But, just think about it. Other people's shoes are on top of your head all day long. That's grass. And he says to be lower than that, to be lower than the grass. What's underneath the grass? Dirt, bugs, germs. So, and then the next two are even more difficult, I think, than those two, as if they weren't bad enough on the false ego. What's next? Amanina. You cannot be proud of anything. Everybody likes to, we were talking last night, everybody likes to hear their praises, right? Everybody loves it when somebody, oh yeah, he's actually appreciated me. Everybody likes that. But amani means somebody who he's not expecting that. And he doesn't take it so seriously also. He's not waiting for that opportunity to relish his praises. And even more difficult, I think, than that, is to give respect to other people. Because usually our tendency is what? We like to find flaws, don't we? But a Vaishnava is a dosha darshi. The flaws are there. Everybody knows. Everyone has qualities and flaws. That's a fact. But the Vaishnava will not consider the flaws. He'll only look to see what are the good qualities. And he'll give respect. Because if you're practiced in seeing the good things about another person, then you naturally develop this qualification. Manada. To give respect to others. But otherwise, like Duryodhana, this is the alternative. Duryodhana. What was it? To find somebody better than you. And he couldn't do it. He couldn't find anybody better than himself. This is our tendency. We have to try to chasten that tendency somehow. Because it will take us to hell, ultimately. Eventually. It'll take us down, and then, if you keep indulging in this selfish mentality, then you will go to hell. It's just a matter of time. It has to be so. The trajectory is there. There's only two directions, up, down, in this game. So, yeah, this is the importance of humility. And the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is what gives us this kind of humility. So, we're just coming to the end now, because the time is already up. Loha ke javat sparshe hemo nahi kore. Tavat sparshamani keho chinite na pare. As long as it doesn't turn iron into gold by its touch, no one can recognize an unknown stone to be a touchstone. We don't know what's what. May have a diamond, we do have a diamond buried in our backyard, but we don't know where it is. Similarly, we have Krishna consciousness within our hearts, but we don't know how to access it. It's a touchstone, but we can't see that because it's It's double-clicked for the time being. One kid in Seattle, he was fighting with his little brother. He said, "Ma, Amma, I want to delete my little brother." So we're trying to delete our Krishna consciousness also, and trying to find happiness in the external world by cultivating mana and disrespect of others, and no tolerance for anything we don't like, and absolutely no humility that's not allowed. How far do you get in this world if you go in for a job interview and tell the job interviewer that what do you hope to seek from this job? Well, I hope to become more humble than a blade of grass. Do they like that? No. They like you to be really aggressive. First class demon. Then they're happy. All right. So anyway. Bhattacharya Vaishnavata dekhi sarvajan Prabhuke janilo sakshat Brajendra Nandan. Yes. Upon seeing this transcendental Vaishnava character in Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, everyone could understand that Lord Chaitanya was none other than Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj. Who else can turn this Pakka Mayavadi into such a wonderful devotee that he doesn't even want to hear the word liberation anymore? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Kashi Mishra Adi Jata Nila Chalavashi Sharan Laila Shabe Prabhupade Ashi. After this incident, all the inhabitants of Jagannath Puri, headed by Kashi Mishra, came to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. This was a momentous hour. You have to understand what was the character of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. It was like, if somebody is, preaching to, Stephen Dawking or somebody like this and, converts him to become a devotee. Really, it's a big deal. This Sarvabhauma, he was so widely respected, not only in Puri, but where did he come from? Mithila. Mithila was the center of Navya philosophy, Vaisheshika philosophy in those days. And he was a big, big Pandit, respected also there. So it was a huge thing. And Kashi Mishra, who was he? He was like the temple president in Jagannath Puri. So he came and took shelter of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet. Shei shab kotha age koribe varnan Sarvabhauma kore jaiche prabhura bachan. I'm sorry, Seban. This later I shall describe how Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya always engaged in the service of the Lord. This is only Madhya Lila. We have many more pastimes coming. Jaiche paripati kore bhikha nirvahan Vishtarya age taha koriba varnan. I shall also describe in full detail how Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya perfectly rendered service to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by offering him alms. E Mahaprabhur Lila Sarvabhauma Milan Iha Jai Shraddha Kari Karaye Shravan Jnana Karma Pasha Haite Hai Bimochan Achire Milaye Tane Chaitanya Charan. If one hears with faith and love these pastimes concerning Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's meeting with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, very soon he is freed from the net of speculation and fruitive activity, and attains the shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet. Thank you, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Shri Rupa Raghunatha Pade Jara Asha Chaitanya Charitamrita Kahe Krishna Das. Praying at the lotus feet of Shri Rupa and Shri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishna Das, narrate Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita following in their footsteps. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, the 6th chapter, describing the liberation of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So, we will begin from chapter 7 of the Madhya Lila next time. Stay tuned. For now, we'll stop and ask, are there any questions or any comments? Yes, Shalagram Prabhu. Okay. I mean, depends on how you define it. The last argument could be this Mukti Pade thing, and Lord Chaitanya defeated that one. But Yeah, no, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was thoroughly converted, and that's why everyone was so astonished. That who is such a person can turn this guy into a devotee? He's got to be God. Only can be done. Because we know that love of Krishna comes from only one place. What is that? Krishna. Krishna is the only one who can give this love. Even though he hardly ever does it directly, he usually does it through his devotees, but it's really only possible to come from Krishna. Narayan and other forms of the Lord, they don't give this Krishna bhakti. So, sorry? I'm sorry? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the point is that Mahaprabhu appreciated his attitude. Even though he didn't appreciate changing the words of Srimad Bhagavatam, just like we want to change Prabhupada's books also, or we want to delete certain teachings that, get in the way of our popularity. So, you can't do that. If you're going to do that to your spiritual master, then you might as well do it to the Chaitanya Charitamrita or to the Bhagavatam, as Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya attempted, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't like that. Everything is perfect, except for you. That's what has to change, not your authority. So, okay, anything else? Nothing else, then we'll stop here. Thank you all. Oh, okay, ek aur. Ishwari Kumari.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for such a wonderful and enlightening class. So, when we were discussing about Trinada Vishnu verse, the point clicked into my mind.
A. 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 If you don't say something, it will go on forever. Yes.
So the point clicked into my mind that I'm talking about myself. So sometimes when we have hard time with other devotees, we are looking for the way that how to deal with this. So we find a way that okay, keep a safe distance.
That's one way.
Then when you were explaining about that we should be more humble than the blade of grass, and you were discussing, you were telling about that we don't want to touch shoes, and those shoes are trampling on the top of grass, and what is the underneath of grass is dirt,
Mm.
even lower than the grass.
Mm.
So is that keeping the safe distance from other devotees, or we are like um, giving encouragement to our ego, or what is that?
Your question, I'm sorry, is not real clear to me. Maybe you can rephrase it a little more succinctly. I'm not sure I'm following what you're asking.
So I'm saying that when we are keeping the safe distance from our other devotees,
Safe distance from other devotees.
we are giving
Maybe that's the concept that isn't clear for me, because you're thinking that you can't really relate with this person, so you're afraid of maybe committing offenses or something, so you keep a little distance.
yes,
Okay.
yes. So sometimes people like don't deal with us very nicely.
Okay.
We want to like stay away safely.
Yeah, that's another reason.
Have to face those hard feelings again and again.
Okay.
So, and again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches us that we should keep that Trinada Vishnu in our neck.
Yes.
Like all the time. So we should keep reminding ourselves that we should be more humble than grass. So is this way of keeping ourselves away from devotees, is giving air, is giving encouragement to our false ego that we should not be lower than, we should stay away? I don't know how to address it.
Yeah, and I don't know how to understand it exactly either. I mean,
So I think Mataji is saying sometimes dealing with the devotees, that may disturb us or cause some offense or like the repetition may happen. So is it good to avoid them? Or but saying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says we should be humbler, like less than a blade of a grass. So
Yeah.
following that, even though they commit offenses against us, we should bear them.
okay, so even if someone offends you, you should still respect them? That's what you're asking?
Yeah, but we should not try to stay away from them. We should
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily so, because, Rupa Goswami gives the advice that we should seek out association of people that we can relate to. If there's somebody that you just despise everything about, even though he's a devotee, you can respect him, but from a distance, because it will not be natural. That's very common, actually. I mean, there has to be some basis of relation and some degree of attraction between two people. Otherwise, why do you interact with a person? If there's actually absolutely nothing of that sort, and if there are factors that repulse you from that person, then it's artificial to try to develop a relationship, and that's got nothing to do with false ego. I think it's just practicality. That there are different kinds of people in this world, and that's okay. But if we think that only my type of personality type matters, and these guys are all in Maya, that is a very nonsense attitude. Krishna says in 11th canto, we quoted this verse yesterday, Paraswabhava karmani na prashamse nagarhayat. Another person has a conditional nature, and he has activities that follow from that conditional nature. Those things should not be either praised or criticized, because if you praise them, then the person becomes more deeply entangled in his conditioning. And if you criticize him, he cannot do anything about it. He can't change that nature, so it just discourages him, needlessly. So, the best thing is to just keep as you call, a safe distance for yourself. And that's not necessarily false ego. But if you're looking down on somebody else or everybody else, then it is necessarily false ego. And that should be vigorously attacked until it's killed. You should rout that, because that's very, very unhealthy. Is that answering your question? Yeah, Dharma Prabhu.
Sorry, Prabhu, I was listening to your lecture online. Question, Prabhupada says that even a new devotee practically is already liberated.
Yes.
What does that mean in context of the liberations that you were speaking about?
Well, I said, he's doing the offering. As long as he's doing the offering, he's liberated. He's got samipya mukti. As soon as he goes home, well, maybe not, right? So this is the idea. When a new devotee is liberated also, instantly liberated, that's mercy. But he's got to stay engaged, and that's the hard part, because we have this offensive tendency towards the holy name, as we've been discussing the last few days. And, we've got some stuff to work out of our hearts. Not entirely pure. The trajectory is set, the habits are dying hard, and that's what takes all the work in Krishna consciousness. Anartha nivritti has to happen. Without that, not very likely we can stay liberated. We will sometimes fall down. And we see that. We gave the stats yesterday also. Most devotees, and in fact, historically speaking, most devotees and their gurus have also fallen down. So, it's not so easy thing. We just have to keep working at it, and as she said, you stay humble, and gradually everything will work out fine. We have to stick to it. Anything else? Shaligam again. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a good question. I can't give the question is, merging into Brahmajyoti is temporary because it's artificial. But what about merging into Krishna's personal Satchidananda Rupa? What happens there? I mean, is that eternal, or do you fall from that? And I can't give an authoritative answer for that. I can't think of anywhere where it's actually addressed. But my sense is that it's an impossibility, because we're eternally parts and parcels of the Lord, so we can't really, the Prabhupada calls it spiritual suicide, the attempt to merge, but we never really merge. This is the problem. Whether it's in the Lord's effulgence or in his lotus feet, it's an impossibility. It doesn't happen because we are Bhamai Vamshu Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. He says it very clearly. In Bhagavad Gita, you are eternally distinct as a jiva. So, it's not going to happen. And in that sense, you can say it's temporary, but it's more like an illusion than a temporary status. You want to add something?
You mentioned Brahmajyoti is artificial.
No, merging, the idea to merge into the Brahmajyoti is what's artificial. Brahmajyoti is natural. It's Krishna's effulgence, like the sun god and the sunshine. But the idea that I'm going to just merge into that sunshine forever, it's artificial because we're not like that. It's against our constitution. Our constitution is to serve and to love and to be, engaged in variegated activity. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now they basically go to hell. It depends on how you want to interpret this, because they're called Tamo Yogya by Madhvacharya, and he's a person who believes in eternal damnation, like the Christians. That's why some scholars have speculated that, maybe he was influenced by Christianity or something. But that's not the way. It doesn't seem to me as if our acharyas are seeing it that way exactly. The way that I see that verse is that I haven't reviewed the commentaries recently, so I can't say with 100% surety, but my understanding of that verse is that, when we just continually indulge in the demoniac propensity, without any shame or knowledge or doubt about that, then we're going to go lower and lower and lower. And that means that ultimately you're going to end up in hell. Now, you're not going to end up in hell necessarily eternally, because everything's going up and down. Kalidas says, like the spokes of a wheel. One split second you're on the ground, the next split second you're in the air. But you just keep going up and down like that. That's material existence. Nothing here is substantial. So, the Brahmajyoti doesn't work, and this fruitive activity doesn't work, because sometimes you're doing great and sometimes you're really, really being kicked. So, what Krishna means is that it's a big waste of time. Why go that route? Why go to hell and have to deal with all that stuff and then come all the way back up again? And that should be the take home, I think, from that verse. But it sounds like eternal damnation. And, for all practical intents and purposes it is, because you can be down for a long, long time. And that's not very nice. So, I don't know if that's answering your question. It's an abominable condition. Obviously, Krishna's not endorsing that, right? So, just don't worry about it so much. Become a devotee. Simple. And these four things you have to somehow learn how to embrace, and it's difficult because we're infected, but that's why we have this. We take shelter of the holy name. It's like, it's like a life preserver in the sea of, in the ocean of material existence. Somebody's thrown this holy name. We have if you've got a life preserver, you can at least float there until some ship comes by or some devotee comes by and gives you mercy. But without that, all bets are off. You can go anywhere, anything can happen. You end up as a nerve net. You know what a nerve net is? Nerve net, they call it. Yeah, it's such a simple organism. It consists of just one cell, not even one cell, one element of one cell. Very just, pretty, you talk about double clicking on someone, that's how you do it. You turn them into a nerve net. It's below germs, below cells. But people can do that because Nityam Sarvagatasthana. And the entities are everywhere. And when people really abuse their freedom, they can end up there, and they do every day. It's pretty scary stuff. So better just be a little faithful and follow these teachings nicely. And Krishna says you'll cross over everything by my grace, as we mentioned last night. Okay, it's too late now, almost 9, so we should stop here. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki